The air was thick with the promise of a quiet evening as two patrolmen, Carter Moore and Ethan Vega, sat in their cruiser near the dimly lit intersection that led out of Greenridge. Carter, freshly minted from the academy, wore his nervousness like a badge, his youthful face betraying both excitement and inexperience. Beside him, Ethan, a hardened veteran with decades of service etched into his weary eyes, nursed the last dregs of his bitter coffee. The contrast between them was stark, one eager to prove himself, the other clinging to the wisdom earned through hard lessons. Ethan squinted into the distance as a sleek black sedan rolled past, its polished exterior catching the faint glow of the streetlights. There was no reason for suspicion, no erratic movement or visible violation, yet something about the vehicle stirred a familiar unease deep within him. "Flag that car," Ethan muttered, his voice low but firm. "Doesn't sit right with me." Carter hesitated, his hand hovering over the switch. "You sure?" "It's just, do it," Ethan cut him off, his tone leaving no room for debate. The cruiser's lights bathed the street in red and blue as the sedan slowed to a stop. Carter's pulse quickened as they approached, his fingers grazing the edge of his holster, a habit more born of insecurity than necessity. When the driver's window rolled down, the man behind the wheel greeted them with a calm smile. His features were sharp, his demeanor composed, yet something about his presence demanded attention. "Evening, officers," the man said, his voice steady, tinged with authority. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he studied the man. "License and registration." Without hesitation, the man handed over his documents. Carter peeked over Ethan's shoulder as the name on the ID came into focus: Nathaniel Graves. It wasn't just a name, it was the name. Graves was the newly appointed chief investigator of the Internal Affairs Division, a figure whispered about in the precinct with a mixture of respect and fear. His reputation as a relentless seeker of justice preceded him. "Ben," Carter began cautiously, "maybe we should—" Ethan silenced him with a subtle shake of his head, his pride driving him forward. "Were you aware you were going a little fast, Mr. Graves?" he pressed, despite knowing there was no infraction. Nathaniel's gaze didn't waver. "No, officer. Is there an issue?" The tension between the two men thickened, and Carter felt it coil around him like a vice. He shifted uneasily, the rookie's instinct whispering that this encounter was spiraling into dangerous territory. Ethan, however, seemed undeterred. "A routine search," Ethan said, masking his challenge as procedure. "Just to be sure." Nathaniel leaned back slightly, his posture unyielding but non-confrontational. "Of course," he said evenly, "but let's not forget who I am, or the protocols that apply." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he motioned for Nathaniel to step out of the vehicle. With deliberate movements, Nathaniel complied, his expression unreadable. Carter's stomach churned as Ethan began the search, rifling through the car with a methodical precision that betrayed his frustration. Each second felt like an eternity, and Carter's unease grew with every slam of a compartment. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't about the law anymore. It was about Ethan's need to assert control over a man who symbolized accountability. When Ethan finally reached the trunk, he hesitated, his voice a muttered command. "Pop it." Nathaniel's brow arched ever so slightly, but he complied. The trunk revealed nothing but an immaculate first aid kit and a neatly folded police uniform. The stark evidence of normalcy hung in the air like a quiet reprimand. Ethan slammed the trunk shut, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "Anything else, Officer Vega?" Nathaniel's tone was calm, but the undercurrent of disappointment was unmistakable. "Or are we done here?" Ethan's lips thinned, and Carter, sensing the moment's fragility, stepped forward. "Sir," he stammered, it was just a misunderstanding. We meant no harm." Nathaniel's eyes softened as they met Carter's, a flicker of recognition passing between them. "You're new," he said, his voice gentler now. "Learn from this. Integrity is everything." Then, turning back to Ethan, his expression hardened. "Authority isn't a shield to hide behind, Officer Vega. Misusing it, even in the guise of procedure, erodes trust, not just in you, but in the badge you wear." Ethan's shoulders sagged under the weight of Nathaniel's words. The veteran officer who had once seemed unshakable now stood visibly diminished. Nathaniel returned to his car, pausing briefly to deliver one final parting shot. Justice is a responsibility, not a weapon. Remember that. As the sedan disappeared into the night, its taillights fading like dying embers, silence enveloped the two officers. Carter shifted uncomfortably, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and shame. "Ben," he ventured tentatively, "what just happened?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, burdened with a heaviness Carter hadn't heard before. "What happened," he said slowly, "is that I let my pride get the better of me, and it almost cost me everything." Carter stared at him, the words sinking in like stones in water. The badge he wore suddenly felt heavier, no longer just a symbol of power but a reminder of the immense responsibility it carried. "You questioned me," Ethan added, glancing at Carter. "Don't stop doing that, even if it means challenging someone with more experience. Sometimes we're wrong." The admission hung in the air, raw and unvarnished. For the first time, Carter saw Ethan not as the infallible mentor he'd imagined, but as a man. Flawed, fallible, and learning, just like him. The rest of their shift passed in a reflective silence, the earlier encounter casting a long shadow over their routine patrols. Carter couldn't shake the image of Nathaniel Graves standing tall, his words cutting through the night like a blade. Justice is a responsibility, not a weapon. The lesson was clear, but it wasn't easy to swallow. Carter vowed to carry it with him, a guiding principle etched into his very core. Ethan, too, seemed changed, his once unyielding demeanor softened by the weight of his realization. As dawn broke over Greenridge, painting the streets in hues of gold and pink, Carter stole a glance at his partner. Ethan looked older somehow, the lines on his face deeper, his gaze distant. But there was also something else, a quiet determination to be better. They didn't speak of the incident again, but it lingered between them, shaping their actions and decisions in ways that words never could. For Carter, it was the beginning of a journey toward understanding the true meaning of justice. For Ethan, it was a reckoning, a chance to rebuild the integrity he had so nearly lost. And for Nathaniel Graves, it was another step in his relentless pursuit of accountability, a reminder that the fight for justice was never truly over.